welcome to Let's Talk About ... a series spotlighting leaders, authors, artists, marketers, creators, and entrepreneurs sharing tips and expert advice about business, media, technology, and frankly, life itself. I'm your host, Cynthia Nelson, three-time entrepreneur, Forbes contributor, investor, and advisor. Today, we're talking to Kathi Sharpe Ross, CEO and president of the Sharpe Alliance Marketing and Consultancy Agency. Kathi, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here, Cynthia.
Well, I want the listeners to understand how you actually started. Like, you've been doing this. You're a 30
Forever.
entrepreneur,
Forever.
forever, global brand, lifestyle marketing guru. You've done it all. You've seen it all. You're not originally from the US. I want people to know, like, how you got here and, what motivates you every day.
Thank you. Well, gosh, what a fun question, because truly I feel like how I got here is so much the reason I do what I do every day. I think I was really blessed to grow up living in different countries. From a young age, I got to see how big the world was, but how small the world was. And having lived, I grew up in Australia. I was born in Australia and I lived there till I was 10 years old. And my father was very entrepreneurial. My mother was very spiritual. She was teaching yoga when I was 3 years old. So she was way ahead of her time. And so I had some incredible exposure through my parents to this lens of go get 'em, entrepreneurial spirit, you can do anything, the world is your oyster. And then literally they took us traveling the world. We lived in different countries, and I landed here in LA when I was 14 years old. So I had a lot of exposure and I got to meet a lot of people. I think it made me very curious, very interested, very aware that we are all the same and we are all different all at the same time. And I am so incredibly grateful for this upbringing that actually I think is really the fabric of who I am today, both between the world that I've seen and experienced and who my parents were to my sisters and myself. And I think it really does explain a lot about why I went on to want to have my own company, why I'm such a free spirit, grounded in business, grounded in a strong work ethic, but a very free spirit in nature in terms of not wanting to work for other people or being very open-minded. There is no box, there are no lines, there are no borders in my world, my psyche. So I feel like that question of where did I kind of come from and where did it all begin really does inform who I am today in a lot of ways. And I feel very blessed. I tell my dad, who's still with us, my mother I lost a year ago. So I've been telling my parents all my life how grateful I am for the tools that they gave us to see the world the way we do and to experience it the way we do.
Yeah, that's really amazing. I mean, that whole global grounding, right? It's global, but it's very grounding in that way of the differences and also the similarities. How does that affect, what you've had this amazing career, right? You've been an entrepreneur, you have an amazing agency. What does it do for its clients? It's different than everybody else. You see, because again, you have no boundaries, there are no lines, you color outside of it. It must be refreshing for clients to meet someone who's not boxed into only one way of doing it.
Well, it's not only not one way, but it's also no limitation on the industries that I work with. And there is a major benefit to that.
Yeah.
First of all, yes, I'm always looking for solutions. And the reason my company grew, so I started the company 35 years ago. So I was, 5, just kidding. If anybody knows me, I'm not exactly that young. But I've had the company for over 35 years now. It started as a public relations agency. So that was kind of the core area of business. The company was called Sharpe Public Relations. And then as I started really engaging with clients, I was very driven to help them grow their businesses. And I realized that the practice of what we did in the PR industry wasn't as much as what we could be doing and that I was interested in doing. And I would lean into those conversations and opportunities with my clients and say, Well, what are you doing about direct marketing? What are you doing about events? What are you doing about partnership marketing? And imagine if we could do da 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 da. And
Right.
when they said, well, yes, we'd love to do that, I'd say, okay, we're going to make that happen for you. And naturally, the company grew and started representing other verticals within that quote marketing world.
Mhm.
And therefore, I stood back at one point and said, okay, we are not just public relations, although you can define that very broadly. We really are public relations and marketing. So I renamed the company along the way as Sharpe Public Relations and Marketing.
Mhm.
At one point, I said, if I never write another press release and if I never talk to another media person again, I'd be one very happy camper.
Yes.
Actually pulled the PR piece out of the business and said, you know what, we'll hire a third-party agency to do that. We'll do strategy, we'll do, management and development of all of these elements. But if someone else is responsible for the tasks and the tactics around that, I'd be perfectly happy. And that was happening as the shift into more partnership, more business development, more licensing, more brand extensions, more
Mhm.
event production. I mean, we were doing so many other things. It was so much more exciting to me, and I got to choose what I wanted to do. So the disciplines and the lack of borders and, oh, it's supposed to be this way. I was never a rule follower. I'm very clear on that now. And I don't think I knew that then. I just did what came to me and what I wanted to do. And that was
Right.
very much my way. And I was like, if I can't figure it out, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to learn, I'm going to read, and I'm going to hire the right people. And we as a team are going to get that done for them. The other part was that we were working with a lot of industries, and we always have and probably always will. So sports, entertainment, lifestyle, technology, retail, mixed use mall, entertainment properties, family entertainment, not-for-profits, B2B global conferences. There was so many different industries that we were delving into
Mhm.
that when I did something in the sports world and then I would pivot and bring that idea into the family entertainment world, they'd be like, wow, what a brilliant idea. You're a genius. I'd say, okay, if you'd like to think I'm a genius, that's
Go
fine.
right ahead.
But the ability to think so creatively across industry categories and bring different thinking
Mhm.
into those worlds is what has really served our clients.
Mhm.
And so I think, again, that openness, that ability to not think within the boundaries of the quote way things are done
Right.
has benefited me tremendously and made what I do very fun and joyful. And also has tremendously, I think, supported the clients and the work that we've done over the years.
I mean, germinating ideas and it goes in and out of fashion every once in a while. But I was thinking about something the other day. Someone said, the one thing you have to do is stop going to the same conferences that you've been going to that are, literally the same people are talking about the same things
Oh, yeah.
and still birthing ideas that you've heard thousand times. You need to go to conferences outside of your industry
Yeah.
and hear new things that are happening that and then you can take back and
Yeah.
apply to what you're doing in your current industry.
You're right. And it's interesting because on that note, I mean, somebody called me the conference queen the other day, and I was like, okay, that's a new title to put on my badge. Um, I realized that because of the number of industries that I am in, I do go to a lot of different industry conferences.
Right.
So technology, sports, licensing, fashion, just so many different industries. And there's probably a whole bunch that I could go to that I'm not
Right.
going to that I would learn more from. But for that reason, I think it's the reason I do a deeper dive education. I think we should always be learning. I'm very curious. I'm very open to what I don't know, and learned a lot of good lessons from my father. It's a smart boy that knows what he doesn't know.
Oh yeah.
So, I think those things are really important, and the things that I pass on to my team here, and really want them to benefit from being an entrepreneur in a company and thinking that way too.
So good for them. I mean, seriously, they're getting a great education that they would definitely not get if they worked in a traditional marketing agency. Absolutely
Or
not.
different,
That's
definitely
very
different.
different. So tell
Yeah.
me about the book and the podcast and the platform. Like you have so many things going on, and then there's more.
And then there's more. Well, this is what's really fun. I think, on the sort of heels of what I was just saying, I've spent a lifetime of a lot of people saying to me, "You are so lucky. Look at your life. You get to do what you want, when you want, how you want, and you seem to be having a really good time at being successful." And I would say lucky, maybe I was lucky to have the parents I had and the exposure and the upbringing that I shared at the beginning of the podcast. But it's hard work. I have not worked since I was about 16 years old. So I've literally worked every day of my life. And they say, if you love what you do, you won't work a day in your life. That is not true. I
Yeah.
love what I do, and I've worked 24/7 my entire life.
Yeah.
So, there is truth to the fact that there is work involved in work.
Yes.
But if you love what you do and you get to have fun doing it, you don't mind doing it as much. And when you're
Right.
doing it for yourself or for clients that you really enjoy, that is incredibly, incredibly valuable. And so, with people saying that to me all the time, I sort of had this epiphany when I was having dinner with a friend of mine in New York one night. And I was saying, people always say I'm so lucky. I said, but anybody could do what I'm doing, or some version of it, or basically could be doing whatever they want. They just need to know that they're entitled. And most people don't realize that
Right.
at the drop of a hat, they could reinvent their lives and do whatever the heck they want with their lives. And it was in that moment, literally out of the ether, that I said the word. It wasn't like it was premeditated. And I said, gosh, I should write a book about that. And that was the catalyst moment where it started to all come very clear to me that I take for granted what I do. I take for granted what I know. And I take for granted the fact that I have created a life for myself. But if people knew that they were entitled to have a life that they wanted to create, whether it takes 5 minutes or 20 years, we could all create what we want to some degree, maybe not to the nth degree, but to some degree of it. We just have to know we're entitled, figure it out, assess what our values and our interests are, put a game plan together, which I call the reinvention roadmap, and really set out to do it, and not just talk about it, and not just wish we could, and not look at other people going, oh, lucky them, the grass is greener on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
But if we really take ownership of that thought and that journey, we too could create what we wanted. So I really started to do a deep dive on that. I started interviewing hundreds of people who had aha moments, as I call them, who had these next steps, next chapters, second chapter moments, looked at people who had late blooming careers, who finally became famous at 40, but maybe had spent 20 years waiting tables, but maybe their whole career path was to get to that moment, but it took that long. Who looked at their lives at some point and said, this has been amazing. Now what? What's next? What else can I do? What's my next chapter? I'm curious. People who have been forced into situations that force them to reinvent. They lost a job, they lost a partner, a war broke out, something happened that was a catalyst moment.
Right.
There are so many ways where we get to kind of look at our lives and say, okay, am I as happy as I want to be? Am I doing what I value and what I really think is important for me? Am I living my best life? And we are always a choice. And whether we choose to reinvent some little piece of our life, it may be career, it may be spiritual, it may be hobbies, it could be relationships, it could be health. There are so many parts. We're very complex individuals. And we could take one tiny little piece and reinvent that. And it could have a ripple effect on the rest of our lives, or just be that one thing that we've done for ourselves that we can pat ourselves on the back for, that will make us feel that we have some control, that we have some sense of direction. We are creating the destination that we want to go to in our lives. And all of this became the subject matter for what became, first of all, a platform called the Reinvention Exchange, which became the community. It became a place where I started to recognize and hold up unbelievable other humans who were experts, advisors, coaches, people who had done profound things that could actually share how to get there. So I became the curator, not the solution, but the curator of all of these conversations. I wrote blogs for the HuffPost, for Thrive Global, started doing public speaking, and gathered all this incredible interview content. Found the most amazing editor, Brooke White, who worked with me in capturing my voice and all 10 years of content that I had now generated, and put it all into this book called Reinvent Your Life. What are you waiting for? I had been blessed to work on a couple of business projects with Quincy Jones, who is one of the most inspirationally magnificent humans I'd ever met. And I asked if he would write the foreword for my book, and he did. So
Amazing.
it's attached to this. And then went to work in getting it published. And, little known fact, my pub date was March 7th, 2020. That would be a week before the pandemic
I
sent
was
the
just going to
entire world
say,
home.
timed it really well.
Not on purpose. So talk about reinvention. I'd planned the book launch parties in LA and New York,
Oh, yeah, of
book
course.
tour events,
Yep.
the entire marketing strategy. I own a marketing agency. I had the entire team ready to go with like the rollout strategy of 6 months, events, all these things. And boom, COVID shut me down. I pivoted, reinvented the book launch plan, and turned it into a virtual reinvention chat series where I did my book signing events online 3 times a week for the first 6 months of the pandemic. Had incredible guests, read excerpts of the book, had different backdrops from bookstores all over the world, had hundreds of people joining for what felt like therapy sessions every month.
Actually, the timing, it sounds like it wasn't great, but the timing actually
No,
was,
it was extraordinary.
perfect.
Well, what I
or something, right?
Yeah, well, I say in the book, and the whole
Frustrating.
premise is stop and pause and think about your life. Well, guess what everybody was doing? Stopping, pausing, and thinking about their lives. And there, all you had to do was 2 clicks and the book was in your hand. 2 clicks and you're on a virtual chat. And then a year and a half ago, I launched the podcast series, The Power of Reinvention. Again, interviewing hundreds of incredible people, their stories, their journeys, and creating a lot of inspirational and motivational content. And it's been an amazing thing because the conversation around marketing, brand reinvention, business reinventions, individuals, personal brands, how they reinvent to kind of keep up with the times or the next chapter of their lives, all of this goes hand in hand. So my business and my reinvention brand have really become almost one and the same and dovetail very nicely into one another. So it's been really fun.
Well, congratulations on that. I have listened to the podcast, so I've heard it. And I think it's really amazing. For anybody out there that wants to listen to another great podcast and pick up the book. Let me go back for a second. There's so much going on, I call it AI exhaustion at this point.
I think there are drinking games now.
I know they're drinking games. I don't think they're drinking games, Kathi. I know.
We know it.
I call it AI, EIEIO kind of. That's always make fun of it. But there's a couple of huge conferences that just, the second year of Possible this year in Miami. And I've heard several people say that, gosh, it was so great. I learned so much. It was so different. I'm not sure I'm going to Cannes because of, there's always the expensive Cannes getting there. It's, it's exhausting for a week to be there on your feet all day, all night. It's the wee hours of the morning, as we all do. But what did you think about Possible and Cannes? Like, I know there's similarities in terms of what have you heard?
So I think, first of all, Possible was incredible this year. 2nd year conference. Everybody's like, where did it come from? Incredible group between MMA Global and the De Mexico folks who really, knew what they were doing. They put an incredible advisory board and steering committee behind them and got folks investing at an early stage into what would be the new conference that was a little different than everything we were all used to doing. And I think the location had so much to do with it. When you talk about, is it the replacement for Cannes? Okay, it's not quite the south of France and it's not rosé and you're not speaking French, but
Yeah.
It's the atmosphere in Miami is quite fabulous. It lends itself to that same kind of ambiance. And I think more importantly, year two, not only did they have great attendees and speakers year one, but year two, highly relevant, high profile personalities, high level business executives that really had something extremely relevant to speak of. And I think that the folks that were in attendance were a very strong caliber. And of course, a lot of people call it the quote pre-party to Cannes. So there are those who were going, you know what, I've done this, I'm good. I've been in the room with all the right people I need to be seeing right now.
Right.
I don't need to go. And I think with people's T&E budgets being slashed, it's helping
Yeah.
a lot of people be able to justify.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a big fan of the Ad Week and Brand Week conferences, and I think
Yeah.
Willie and his team are doing an amazing job really turning that ship around as well at the moment and really trying to reinvent the conference kind of energy.
Yeah.
But Possible just kind of has a bit of a different flair to it. And I think that the conversations are very real time. We had some incredible keynotes this year, one being Gary Vaynerchuk, who is always interesting to listen to, and good for them for leaning in and making that possible, so to speak. The other being one of the more interesting topics of the day is Michael Casson, who was a keynote, and with all that's going on with him and
Yeah.
UTA and all of that, I think everybody was, almost like wanted to be a fly on the wall and hear what he had to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. There's a lot going
You
on, a lot
know,
to unpack there.
yeah. And so I think that, people really sort of leaned in with a lot of enthusiasm and brought their A game and made the effort to be there. And it was, yes, a little more affordable and a little more doable and domestic. So that was justifiable. And I think they're onto something that they can really grow from. What I also know and appreciate, because I know the leadership there, I spend a lot of time talking to them, and they really, really want people's feedback. They really want to know what people are saying. And I met many people who said, you know what? We're sick of going to conferences where people are on a stage and you can never talk to them.
Yeah.
They're
Right.
in VIP rooms, they're at
Right.
VIP dinners, and they'll never come out, and I will never see them. And there were people who were saying that, and they're not wrong.
Yep.
And that happens.
Yeah.
And I think that's an area, like some of the conferences as well, that they need to figure it out. They need to come up with a formula. I've worked with Patow, C2 Montreal,
Yeah.
Summit Series is one of our clients. You've got to figure out how to let those people fraternize. They're not God. They're just humans with good jobs, and they've
Yeah.
been working hard, and they may be really smart. So how do you put those people, and how do you get them to
Mhm.
commit to spending time, whether it's curated, speed dating events, whatever that is?
Right.
Somebody's got to kind of figure that formula out just a little bit better for those who can't walk into the green room. I can walk into the green room. I can see all the people I want to see.
Right.
But a lot of people that pay a lot of money to be there
Yeah.
don't get that. And I
Yeah.
think for those people, that's a piece that they, along with many other conference holders, probably need to kind of figure out a bit
And
more.
I also think for the speakers themselves, because I've seen this at every ad conference and media conference, for years and years. Doesn't matter if it's multicultural or gen market, it has always the same. They leave the stage, you never get to talk. There's no lineup, they're just out the door.
Yeah,
And they could be, frankly, learning a lot
100%.
from the people about the perceptions of their business, of their brand, spark thinking about things they may not be thinking about
Absolutely.
at all. Um, and
1000%.
I think they would be learning as much as the person that they're actually meeting, because you're not going to go up and talk to Mark Pritchard, right, at P&G and not have something really relevant to ask or
Exactly.
or to share,
Yeah, you're right.
right? So
100%.
I think they would learn so much more.
Yeah, and I think you're right. Like if the mandate was, we want you to speak, we also want you to come up with 10 questions of things that you would like to know more about, and we will find the people to
We'll
put
match
you in
you.
a room with.
Yeah, we're
You
gonna
know,
match you with those 10 people, and
yeah,
you get 15 minutes for each person, or whatever happens
yeah,
to be. I think for them,
exactly.
it's like incredibly
Yeah,
valuable,
I agree. I
incredibly valuable.
completely agree. Looks
Uh,
like you and I should start a new conference.
there we go. It's
New business.
no, no,
Oh
no,
God,
one
right,
more new thing.
right.
You know, Rounding this out, I mean, how do people get a hold of you? If I know there's brands that are going to be here calling you, asking me questions. How do they get a hold of you? I obviously there's no segment, I don't think that's off the, off the table in terms
Yes.
of a product segment or type of business.
Yeah.
And how do people get a hold of you?
So I'm very available on LinkedIn. I'm on there every day. And my website, the Sharpe Alliance, oh, it's actually Sharpe Alliance, not the, uh, www.sharpealliance.com. And the reinventionexchange.com is the brand for the book and the podcast and all of that content. But LinkedIn under my name, Kathi Sharpe Ross, is always an easy way to connect with me. And I'm always looking at companies from the point of view of how do we help you grow? And with the clients that we have across retail entertainment projects, mixed use projects across the country, we're working on Jimmy Carter's 100th birthday concert celebration right now, which is happening in September in Atlanta, which is extraordinary. Where you're working with gaming companies and music brands and B2B global summits like Summit Inc.
Right.
And we're always looking at brands that want to connect with audiences, do a deeper engagement. These programs are a form of live media that bring digital, experiential, immersive experiences that create really emotional connections with audiences that are like-minded. So I'm looking at brands always that want to be a part of the world in which we play and we do business, and we bring these programs to life for all of our clients. So I encourage anybody that is looking to grow or expand or enhance the media footprint, be it live or digital or experiential, to connect and find out what we're doing and where we could bring some of these clients to them in meaningful ways. I just love being able to ideate, to sort of figure out how to get 2 and 2 to equal 500 or
Right.
1,000, not
Right.
4. And
Yeah.
that's the world I play in. I'm a huge dot connector, and I see possibilities in where and how brands and companies belong in a room together, and what that thread is and what that messaging is and what kind of moves the needle for people. And that's my playground. And so that's where I get, the most joy out of.
I love it, Kathy. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much that the enthusiasm's just like oozing out, and I'm giving you virtual hugs right now. I know podcasts are so safe, but we like hugging each
Likewise.
other
Thank
virtually.
you.
Thank
Thank
you so much for
you. Thank
being
you for
on the
having
show.
me. I love this show. Thank you.